Let's move on, speaking of complications, to the debt ceiling negotiations that continue to puzzle the Republican Party. Right now, actually, in fact, this is from CNN. Yesterday, he made a plea to House Republicans during a closed-door meeting to back his debt ceiling plan. He's telling Republicans that although it doesn't have to include everything they want, it will help get him to the negotiating table with President Joe Biden. Now, again from CNN, House Republicans are insisting that any increase in the debt limit must be paired with spending cuts. And the White House is saying that the debt limit should be raised without any conditions whatsoever. So after that meeting, we can put this next element up. Chip Roy goes on Glenn Beck's show, and Olivia Beavers tweeted this out. Chip Roy says, McCarthy has done a good job laying out the floor for debt ceiling talks, but also that Republicans, quote, better damn well fight for things that are not currently included in that debt ceiling plan, like undoing the damage of the Inflation Reduction Act and the damage of the IRS proposal. Chip Roy said McCarthy has, quote, a hard job, but there are still some things we need to address. McCarthy's side wants to get a bill out by next week and get it to pressure Joe Biden. That seems incredibly unlikely. What is your sense?
And for people not in the Capitol bubble, who is Chip Roy in the ecosystem of the House Republicans and the right? For
a lot of people, Chip Roy probably first got on their radar during the speakership contest earlier this year when Kevin McCarthy was just fighting after vote after vote after vote, because Chip Roy has become a leader in the Freedom Caucus sort of circle, and he's endorsed Ron DeSantis for president. He was Ted Cruz's chief of staff. He's sort of a Tea Party kind of conservative populist who really knows the Hill and really knows procedure and has definitely become a leader in those circles. So it's significant that he's saying this needs to address it, because it sounds like he still wants a concession from McCarthy that if they punt, this reminds me of actually what Democrats were going through with the Inflation Reduction Act. If they punt, they need to promise other things, or he's saying there's going to be no punting at all. What is your sense of whether the White House would give an inch on any of that?
I don't think they will yet, for sure. And a funny side note on that IRS proposal that he mentioned, McCarthy told, and I think you saw it, McCarthy told him, look, I wanted to put that in, but the problem is that according to the CBO, and also according to all common sense, and according to the reasons that we actually don't like this proposal, is that it raises a lot of revenue, something like $200 billion over the course of the next 10 years, because you have more resources to the IRS who can go over the tax returns and say, actually, you pencil whipped this one here, that's wrong.
You had $700 in your Venmo account last year.
Right. So pay up. So it brings money in. So if they want to repeal the IRS, then all of a sudden they have to find another couple $100 billion somewhere else, and they've ruled out Pentagon, they've ruled out Social Security, Medicare. They're looking under every couch cushion for every penny. They can't afford to be then also playing this IRS game. So maybe the Freedom Caucus will fold on that one. But you're right, they want much bigger concessions from McCarthy, which then moves the legislation, A, farther away from getting 218 among all of Republicans, and B, farther away from anything serious. Because if it becomes something that is so clearly just kind of a fantastical wish list of the right, then it's not a legitimate negotiating position.
And that's what's hard for McCarthy to suss out right now, because to make matters even worse for him, there's a handful of members, Republican members, who don't want to, who will not do any debt ceiling negotiations, or are not voting to raise the debt ceiling, period. Right. And so you have this combination of people who are saying, we don't want to do it, but we will do it if you give us this. And they're mixed in the negotiations with people who are saying, we're not doing it, period. And so to cobble together, especially when you have such a thin margin as Speaker, the coalition to get something like that done is incredibly difficult.
So it seems like the odds are against him getting anything through the House, period, through his own conference. What do you think? Do you think because if he doesn't, then he's really back to square one. What's your guess as to whether he can get the Nancy Maces, the kind of moderate-ish Republicans on the one hand, and the Chip Roys and all the others who are demanding bigger concessions, all to agree on a single package?
I think this is the moment that it either all implodes or that McCarthy keeps walking a tightrope. And he has been adept at walking that tightrope, surprisingly so. I mean, I think some people, Politico ran a story last year like, is Kevin McCarthy dumb? Was the headline, you might remember it. But he's been, for someone that has sort of gotten dismissed by the Washington press corps as like bumbling, he's been pretty adept at walking that tightrope within his own conference and keeping Republicans, even though he had to go through 20 votes to get the speakership, he got it, and he's generally had the support going forward. There haven't been a lot of this hasn't boiled over and bubbled to the surface, and so to do that, I know it's only been a few months. It's actually pretty crazy if you look at what the Republican conference is like right now. So he could continue to walk that tightrope. I wouldn't bet against him. At the same time, it's just so hard when you have people who are not voting at all for a debt ceiling and people who are saying, eh. So I mean, I wouldn't bet against him. Because he's been giving so much when it comes to these hearings, when it comes to these investigations, they're more willing to give him a little slack.
So then let's game it out from there, because anybody who's watching this or listening on the podcast who has a 401k is deeply concerned about whether or not we're going to have a repeat of 2011, which was a debt downgrade, and I think the stock market lost like 25% of its value before they came back. So basically what happened, what Boehner did in order to get his conference to agree to a debt ceiling increase back then was crash the car. Like you're in a game of chicken, and you just have to crash the car. To prove to the people in the back seat
you'll do it.
That we'll do it, and it's going to hurt. Like, buckle up.
Right.
And so whether he passes something through the House or not, in order to get to a place where both Biden is scared enough to maybe come a little bit towards House Republicans, but more importantly, that the Freedom Caucus realizes that they've fought as hard as they can. They've taken it as far as they can go, and that if they take it any further, they're not going to win, and they're going to blow the car up rather than just kind of mangle it on the side of the road, which means that he is. I don't see another route for him personally to get the debt ceiling done other than crash the car. I could see a route where it gets done where he gets ousted. You can vacate the chair and put somebody else in who then does it. And then you have another speaker fight after that to see maybe he even comes back after that. But for him to personally get it done as speaker, I feel like he has to take 20% off the stock market or something before people are like, all right, fine. We did everything we could. There's a lot of pain. I'm getting yelled at by every business owner in my district. Okay, fine. Let's do the debt ceiling. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally see how that's. I mean, it's the option that Boehner went with, except the difference between Boehner and McCarthy is that McCarthy prides himself on being a unifier, whereas Boehner had gotten to the end of his rope with the kind of people who had come in that wave and were anti-Obama and the sort of Tea Party era Republicans. He just said, screw it. It's harder for me to see Kevin McCarthy doing the same thing. That said, tactically, it's not the end of the world, because if you are an establishment Republican, you pin the blame on the crazies, the cuckoo birds, to quote a senator at the time, that might have been 2014, but you can blame it on the crazies, and that's why the White House has the upper hand in all of this. They don't need to give an inch, because politically, they know that it'll all come back on Republicans. The media will help them frame this as totally the fault of Republicans. The fiscal responsibility of the country in general will fall on Republicans. Currency downgrades, everything is going to fall on Republicans because they're going to look obstructionist. And that's a huge, the White House just simply does not need to, that's policy question aside, at least on the political strategic messaging front, that's why they have the upper hand.
So yeah, we're going to crash.
We might crash, although, remember, Kevin McCarthy charmed Jim Jordan, of all people, and because he has been willing to give so much, he does have some slack. There are some things that he can give them to make it work, and he's done it before, so... but
if you remember, it took him, 4 or 5 days?
It took him a long time.
That's a long time in terms of a market crash.
Right. I don't see this happening by next week. There's no way.
Right, we'll see.
We'll see. Maybe I shouldn't say there's no way. He might over the weekend. They might work on something. Who knows? And
for fun, the other point I would add is that when Republicans are kind of forced to then put their own ideas forward, one reason Democrats feel like they're in a good position is because you start to get stuff like Buddy Carter. Did you see his suggestion?
Let's see it
recently. All right,
let's
roll Buddy Carter here.
We will be able to capture that underground economy, if you will. As distasteful as it may be, the pimps, the prostitutes, they're going to be paying taxes because they consume. They go out and they buy groceries. They go out and they buy stuff. And that's where you're going to be paying the taxes on.
So that's Buddy Carter making his argument for basically a 30% like flat sales tax to just hit everybody, the pimps and the prostitutes. And
then get all the taxes out of the way.
There you go. But I think a lot of people, aside from kind of how funny it is to hear Buddy Carter talking about how he's going to tax the pimps and the prostitutes, people are going to wait, 30%? So all working people, middle-class people, everybody's going to pay 30% sales tax on all of their consumption, which is going to be extremely regressive. And so I just feel like when you get into these debates, the Democratic view of let's fund good things, education, healthcare, climate spending, and let's fund it, and let's tax billionaires and millionaires to do that. That position is just more popular than let's put a 30% sales tax on everything, or let's do a flat tax, or let's cut this so that we can do tax cuts for the rich down the road.
It's way more palatable to say we're going to not upset the apple cart in the near term. It's very hard, and Macron is learning this right now. A lot of lessons for Republicans over in France. Obviously there are arguments that you need to do things to secure a safe and healthy future along the lines of what Macron is making. That said, there are ways to do it, and there are ways not to do it, and it's always going to be harder to do it than to not. So it's no easy fight for Republicans going forward. There is a chunk of the country that won't be super pleased if Biden is just like, screw it, we're just going to keep raising the debt ceiling, blah, 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 I'm not going to make any cuts. There's a chunk of the country that will be irritated by that, but it's not going to compare to, it's no contrast there. Or clear contrast, I should say.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.